Hey everyone, and welcome. Oh, hang on a second here. Bear with me, I'm just trying to get all the things going. Just checking in with Instagram here to make sure that we're on. Preview, looks like it's going. I'm getting an error message, so just a second. I'll be right with you. Looks like Instagram is just not streaming. Let me check one more time. One more time. I'm not sure. From within Instagram, it looks like we're good to go. From within my broadcasting stream, it does not look good to go. Sometimes you just can't tell. Well, folks, we're going to go ahead anyways, because I know that some of you are here and want to meet with you. So, welcome. I'm Susan Smith. We're in my studio, Stitched by Susan, where for the entire month of April, I'm coming to you live each and every day with a topic about machine quilting. And a little bit new for me in terms of what I do in public, I always quilted a longarm machine. And in fact, I'm standing by Stella, my longarm machine today. And if I move a little bit, you can see her. She's attached because I'm actually quilting. But new this month is I am also introducing topics that have to do with working at a sit-down machine. So many of you I know do. And that's the way I started quilting too, was just at my domestic sewing machine. And I don't have a sit-down long arm. I still just work at a domestic machine, but it's got a bit of a nicer throat space than I used to have. And so in an effort to bring you some more topics that relate to working at a sit-down machine, I've been buffing up my own skills because it is a different skill to move the fabric under the needle. And so bringing that back to memory and getting comfortable doing that again, and then just bringing you more topics that relate to that. I hope that is super helpful for you. I would love for some of you who maybe are sit-down quilters to be commenting. Are you finding these topics useful, and maybe even what topics you would like to see? So let's just see if everyone's able to hear me okay today. Georgia, caught alive. Watch all of your shows, but seldom catch alive. That's great. Okay, looks like we're doing good. Yesterday I had issues with my sound, so I'm trying today to be more careful with my checks. Today's topic, though, is basting for a sit-down machine. How do you baste those layers together? How do you keep them in place? What are some of the different ways? And again, what are their pros and cons? This is kind of how I always teach. It's not an always or a never. It's a, there's this way, and there's this factors about it, and then there's this way, here's why, etc. So you can then make the decision that's best for you. I put in the thumbnail that I was talking about 4 ways, but I actually thought of a 5th, which I'm going to put first because it is the simplest by far. And that is when you're quilting something quite small. So for example, when I'm quilting some of these demos for my upcoming freehand quilting masterclass, they're smaller pieces, maybe table runner equivalent or smaller than a baby quilt even. A really simple way is to simply layer your backing, your batting, and your quilt top and steam it. So if you have a steamer, that works great, or an iron that steams. You don't have to press down on it very much, but just that action of steaming will slightly adhere the backing to both those, or sorry, the batting, the fluff inside, to both your upper and lower layers and keep things kind of in place while you're working on a small project. It's not foolproof. It doesn't work for bigger things where you're turning it and shifting it. It moves too easily. It gives way too easily. But it is a simple way to just put some simple things together. Another simple one might be placemats for your table, right? Where they're just not very big. There's not a lot of rolling up or movement or handling of them. So that way is the simplest by far. The other way that's been around for a long, long time would be basting by hand. So with a simple running stitch, maybe even an inch or 2 long, and basting either in rows or a big X or a cross hatch that's a few inches. Whatever your quilting density is, that might help you to decide how much basting you need, how much shifting you're going to be doing of that quilt. The closer, the more secure. The further apart that stitching is, the less secure for doing a lot of manhandling. So thread basting by hand, that's an option and a fairly easy way, honestly. If you've got your project spread out flat on maybe a counter or a tabletop, you can zip some long running stitches in there pretty quickly. Takes quite a bit of thread. It's not difficult to undo or pull out. either later on or as you come to it while you're quilting. So that's a choice that works really, really well. The third and most robust, I think, way of basting would be with safety pins. And I don't have any basting pins to show you even because I never baste a whole quilt this way anymore because I have my long arm, right? But essentially they look like a safety pin, but the bottom of them has a bit of a bend in it, a bit of a crook, enabling you with one hand easily to grasp the pin and go down in the fabric and back up. Whoever invented that, it's just a little tiny thing, but it really, really helps. So if you're going to baste with pins, I strongly recommend investing in basting pins because they do take quite a bit of the work out of it. And in addition, there's a tool, and I think it's called Quick Clip, Kwik, and it's kind of like a screwdriver with a handle and a peg on it, but that peg just has a couple of ridges in it, and basically you dip in that safety pin and rest it in a ridge, and it holds your safety pin still, and you can close it with the same hand, enabling you to not have to manage that safety pin with two hands, right? And I'm just checking in to make sure that I've got sound. Good, looks like I do. And Nita's chiming in. Sit down and long arm tips are very helpful. Excellent. Okay, so we're safety pinning with our little quick clip. It works actually pretty well, and that was the method I used the most when I was working at a sit-down machine and doing entire quilts. It's very secure, but you do need to pin quite a lot. So my measuring stick was kind of the width of my fist, so a little less than 4 inches, kind of in every direction. And I sort of did a row and then alternated a row in between-ish. But another nice thing about pins is that you can place them, for example, if there's applique on your quilt, right? You can strategically place your pins to be able to not have to take them out, but be able to quilt close to them while you're getting some of that established, or maybe you're stitching in the ditch around some blocks. You can put your pins beside, so you can manipulate that a little bit to be convenient for you. Otherwise, you've got to be pulling out the pins, obviously, as you get to stitching in that area. Couple of the downsides of pins. However much the bend in the safety pin and the quick clip tool helps, it is still a ton of work to put a few hundred safety pins in a quilt. It takes a couple of hours to baste even a lap size quilt and probably a couple of blisters. So it's not a project for the quick or for the faint of heart. I found that I could not baste a whole quilt in one sitting. I had to split it up a little bit. My fingers would just get so sore from handling those safety pins. So that's probably the biggest downside of the pins, is it's time consuming, but it does work. You'll see this on lots of quilters' reels, like on Instagram or Facebook. You'll see lots of people, whether they're spreading it out on a floor or over a granite countertop, anything that's flat, fold out tables. You know, so some of my cautions are, whichever basting method you're using, make sure that you can get that backing out smooth and flat. I used to have a countertop. It was kind of like an island that stretched out into my kitchen, and it was wide enough that I could put a quilt sort of over it. So what I would do is start in the middle of my quilt, and the ends would both hang down, right? I would spread my backing, painter's tape it on both sides, spread out my batting in my quilt, pin that area, and then I would slide it toward me or away to do the other ends of the quilt and move it as many times as I needed to. And that worked very good. If you have a floor space big enough, well and good. Lots of us don't have an utterly clear floor space that we can spread it on. Best to have a hard surface for sure. Working on a carpet, it's going to be virtually impossible to keep things flat and smooth. And in future talks like this, I'm going to talk a little bit more about some of the ways that you kind of manage a quilt during the process, whether it's advancing at the long arm or whether it's moving it around at the sit-down machine. But as with so many things in quilting, all these different things add up. So to have the smoothest possible basting job is going to be the first sum in your bucket, so to speak, to having a good result that's wrinkle-free, you know, no creases in the back and stuff like that. So that's really key in my opinion. Don't do it on a carpeted floor, even if you've got a giant family room floor. You just can't keep it smooth enough when you're working with all those layers. So hard surface is a great choice. Alice is chiming in. I love the quick clip tool. Yes, it is an immense help. It's like having a third hand. Sue Johnson, Here's another technique. Sue Johnson, I use a basting gun with plastic pieces. So that would be the kind of little plastic tips that are in your clothes with a price tag. Now I'm curious, Sue, can you get them shorter? Because I feel like the fabric can still shift quite a bit with those. So I'd be curious to hear how that works for you. Barbara, I use my purple thang like the quick clip tool. I just rest the safety pin on the groove on the back of the purple thang, which is an actual tool. Yeah, I can see that, Barbara. Exactly the same principle, right? Just a place to, kind of a third hand to hold that safety pin while you shut it with your right hand or your predominant hand. Jana's safety pins always caught on my foot, so I switched to the corsage pins. So you must mean that safety pins caught on your quilting foot as you were moving over it. And so that's kind of why one of the reasons why you have to remove them as you're quilting close to them. And like if it's working for you, don't let me discourage you. But I would find corsage pins hard because as I'm rolling up or folding up my quilt, I'd be stabbing myself. I know I would. But if it's working for you, good for you. Okay, on to the last two methods. And if you read my description on YouTube and Facebook, I said that I was fairly opinionated about some of these methods, and here they come. You get to hear my opinions. Everybody's entitled to them. A pretty common method of basting, and it seemed more common when I first started quilting at my sit-down machine, was the 505 basting spray. 505 is a brand. There may be others. That's a really common one. So it comes in an aerosol can. You know, you spray the backing, you put the batting on it, you spray that, you put the top on it. It works. It works really well, actually. As I recall, I think you do a light press over it too to kind of just stick all those things together. But here's the caveat. Well, there's more than one, but here's the big one. When you spray that stuff, it makes you cough like crazy. It catches in your lungs. And I just think if it makes you cough like that, it is not doing you any good. So I used it once or twice and then I thought, yeah, no more of that. I don't want to be inhaling that stuff at all. Maybe for tiny projects, maybe if you spray them in a well-ventilated area, perhaps it would be a useful tool. So maybe think about that. The other caveat I found, which I just did not love, is it's sticky. Surprise, surprise. Any overspray is nasty. Nasty to get off your floors or anything that it touches. And it was hard not to have overspray. I remember trying it with a giant, flat sheet laid out and then my quilting apparatus on top. But I still got that dang overspray and it was sticky and horrible. So I did not like the spray at all. Personal opinion. But chiefly, I just don't think you want to inhale that stuff. I think it's really, really nasty, actually. Okay, seeing if there's anyone else chiming in. Jolene is saying she can't hear me on Facebook. Pretty sure, Jolene, it might be something on your end. So maybe exit out and come back in because I'm pretty confident my mic is working on all fronts this morning. Sue is replying about the little plastic tags, I guess you would call them, that you can shoot in with a glue gun, and she's saying hers are 1/2 inch long. So I still feel like that does not really accurately hold my layers in place because there's 1/2 inch of movement. However, I can certainly see that working for certain applications or even for an initial basting, because someone is saying on here in the comments that I pin first and then I do a running stitch. Absolutely, it would work well for that, just to kind of hold the whole thing in place. And again, Sue, if you're having success with that, fly at it. Good, good, good. And Felicia's saying my picture has frozen. Again, I'm afraid that that's the app. I'm streaming this through streaming software and it's working well there. It may be that when you come back and watch it later, when it actually uploads, that it may clear up. I hope so, but I'm not aware of anything I can do to change it. Video is frozen. If I exit out, I'll see if my husband texts me because he's watching this too, because if I exit out, then I can't get back in. Let me just double check my camera here. This is so tricky. Well, guys, I'm going to continue. I do see that the video is frozen, but if I exit out, then it won't connect to the same live stream. So I'm going to continue. I'm almost finished for today. We'll try again fresh tomorrow. Okay, the one last method I wanted to talk about, I've seen a number of times recently on YouTube and on Instagram, people have been talking about basting with washable glue. Washable glue is a fabulous, fabulous tool because it's washable, because it does not discolor your fabric. It's not actually a glue, it's a sticky paste. So it is a great tool for a quilter. I am not convinced it's a good basting tool because it dries stiffer. Even if you water it down a little bit, you've got to keep it strong enough to hold all the layers in place, and then it dries stiffly. And I do not feel like that is conducive to getting good quilting at your sit-down machine. Maybe if you're doing very loose quilting, maybe it will be fine for that, but I feel like it's not the best basting option. Again, this is just my opinion. I want to be clear about that. There are probably people out there that are having good success with it, perhaps, but I feel like it's not the easiest or smoothest thing to work with. And when you have this crinkly sort of stiff quilt, how is that going to work? And if you force it to fold and bend and roll up, which you're often doing at the sit-down machine, then it's going to lose its grippy quality, right? It's going to pull apart. And then where will you be? It won't be basted any longer. So sorry that the video has frozen, you guys. I think I'll cut it short for today because of all that. Just do know I will be back again tomorrow with a fresh topic, similar time of morning. So tune in every day through the month of April for live chats about all kinds of topics machine quilting related. I would love if you would give this episode, despite the frozen video, a thumbs up and share it too with your quilting friends. More people to join in, and that would be great. So until tomorrow, have a great day. Catch you next time.